Why should you attend the Baptist Peace Fellowship of North America Conflict Transformation Training? A story is told about a couple. The wife went to France. This was in the days before internet, before international telephone service. Long-distance communications were handled by Western Union using Morse code. And the wife sent a telegram back to her husband saying, I saw this beautiful piece of jewelry. She included the price and said, I'd like to buy it. Do I have permission? May I buy it? The husband quickly answered, no, price too high. Well, when she came back from that vacation, back to New York City, the husband was surprised to learn that she had purchased it after all. And he said, why? She said, well, you gave me permission. You clearly wrote in your telegraph, no price too high. Well, I understand that's the reason why Western Union started using the word STOP in between phrases. Well, the point of this story is that something really tiny like a period can make a great big difference. It's a tiny thing. And sometimes in our work, in our lives, a success or a failure, or good communications or misunderstandings can hinge on very, very small things. Things that we might not even be aware that we're doing or saying or not doing. In conflict transformation, that's where you will learn to identify those markers, some very small, some not so small, that hinder us or help us become more faithful followers of Jesus, the peacemaker. You'll learn how to communicate more effectively, non-violently, with your spouse, with your significant other, maybe your parents, your children, a brother, a sister, classmates, your pastor, friends, even enemies. Jesus did say something about loving our enemies, right? In conflict transformation training, you will develop those skills and learn those tools for communicating. My name is Garth Sorensen, originally from Kansas. I worked many years in Los Angeles, California, and I now live here in Morelos, Mexico. Since April 4th, 1968, I have dedicated my available time and energies to being a peacemaker. In a eulogy for Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. at Wichita State University campus, a Baptist pastor emphasized that whenever Dr. King was asked to give his own definition of who he is and what he's doing, he said, I am a Baptist pastor. I am doing God's work, what God has called me. You know, I went away from that service with a question in my brain, what am I doing? What has God called me to do? Began to open my eyes to see the racist and unjust systems around me, and I began to feel trapped in them. Is there some way out of this? Can that kind of profound change really take place? In 1964, there was one black family in the First Baptist Church where my father pastored in Tribune, Kansas, on the western edge of Kansas. And my father asked me to read aloud to the church the letter from a Birmingham jail written by Dr. King. A high school senior at that time, I did not fully understand what it must have meant to read such a powerful statement in a predominantly white church right there in the center of Bob Dole country in that year. My father had shown me one small step toward peacemaking. It was a small act, but my father's courage perhaps made a big difference to some in that community. I know it did because some of them came to his funeral. It certainly made a difference to me. In your conflict transformation training, you will learn many similar personal stories, stories of courage, and stories of interest. It will help you to know that you're not alone when you begin to act on those desires that God has put in you, those desires to act out those senseless acts of beauty and those random acts of kindness. But with conflict transformation training, those acts of kindness will not be quite so random because you will learn the skills to be more intentional with those acts. In 1992, I was honored to accompany Rigoberta Menchú Tum when she won the Nobel Prize in Guatemala. That experience convinced me that very deep and profound changes can take place, are taking place, and I can be a part of them. And I can retain my Christian identity, even my Baptist identity, while doing them. You know, that's what conflict transformation training taught me, was that I can be even more effective in what it is I'm already doing. Another point, in Nicaragua, 1985, I was part of a Witness for Peace delegation, and in my Bible reading, I read this: unused fields could yield plenty of food for the poor, but unjust men keep them from being farmed. Proverbs 13:23. Doesn't that describe the situation that many peasants, Mayans in Guatemala found themselves in Guatemala in the 1940s when United Fruit Company claimed large tracts of land and did not allow them to be farmed? Or maybe our Nicaraguan Christian friends there in 1985 saw that same thing and were relating to us how great tracts of land were not permitted to be farmed because Somoza controlled them. You see, the Bible is relevant. That's another thing that this particular conflict transformation training emphasizes. Understanding, interpreting the Bible. It is biblically based. You will learn, perhaps for the first time, the counterculture actions of Jesus, what it meant when he said, turn the other cheek. Perhaps it did not mean simply accepting whatever comes your way. You'll learn other things. Might surprise you what the Bible has inside of it once we unlock the cultural contexts. Finally, you'll experience fun. And I mean the value of fun. Did you know with tennis balls you can learn about trust and confidence and communication? Did you know that with a circle of chalk on the floor, you can learn about how learning takes place and where learning takes place? Did you know that a rope on the ground can teach you, can teach me about that aggressiveness that's inside of me? Well, you know, It can, and that's what I learned. More importantly, I learned that I need other peacemakers with other types of personalities to work with me. Just this last year, in 2013, after my conflict transformation training in May, I hosted, or helped put together, a great event that took place in Los Angeles, California in November. And I used those skills that I had learned at the conflict transformation training to identify and encourage participation from many people that I formerly would not have thought of putting into that mix. It was a great event, one of the best events I've ever participated in many, many years. You can learn a lot how to be better at what you're already doing, how to be that peacemaker that God has called you to be. That's the value of conflict transformation training.